room is the ceilings are a little higher, so we get to stay a little bit cooler than we would if we were all packed in the community center. Just real quick, I want to make a few introductions, just so you guys know who the players are here tonight that are standing in front of you. This is my lieutenant, Dave Cadelle.
Hey, Dave.
We've got Captain Brady Hill. We've got Lieutenant Chang, and Kevin Brennan, the biologist from Fish and Wildlife. Rick Fisher was supposed to be here. Rick Fisher, our local warden, should probably be up here as well. I just want to go over real quick the format and kind of the agenda for tonight's meeting so there are no surprises. As my lieutenant already said, if you have questions, fill them out. We put it out there on Facebook. If you guys had questions, send them in. But if you didn't get an opportunity to do that, that's what those little notepads are. If a question comes up, raise your hand. David Druck will pick that up and get it up to us so we can make sure that those get answered throughout the course of the evening. The reason I say that is in the past we've done many of these keep them wild type community meetings, and they've been very, very open discussion because the groups have been a lot smaller. And we've allowed questions from the floor. We're not going to do that tonight. It's not open mic night, except this one, and it belongs to us. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and write those down, and we'll get them answered. All the questions that came in on the internet have all been read. Everybody's aware of them. And we think that tonight's program will answer all those questions. You guys give a big hand for Rick Fisher, the late warden.
Oh, the big bird.
So, with that, the agenda for tonight is we're going to start with Kevin, and he's going to give us a presentation from Fish and Game's perspective, all about the bears, how the bears are classified, when bears get a depredation permit, why a depredation permit is issued, a lot of those questions, how to keep them wild, because that's really where we're focused tonight. We're focused for the future. And what are we going to do in this community to prevent problems down the road? So with that, I bring up Kevin.
Thank you, Paul. Before I get started, just give you a little bit about my background. Some of you, I think, have been to these meetings before up here where I've given presentations, and pretty much going to be the same thing again tonight. I'm a wildlife biologist with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Been here for 24 years, going on 25. And before that, I worked for the Forest Service for 5 years as a wildlife biologist, and before that, with Colorado Division of Wildlife. So I've been dealing with bears and other critters for some time. I'm just going to jump right into it here. If I run into any problems, I've got some different technology than I usually use, but hopefully this will work. And it does. Okay, map of California. Bear habitat in the state is, follow the bold line there. Notice down here in Southern California, south of San Bernardino County line, that's the newest addition to range of bears in the state. It's the I-10 freeway serves more as a filter than a barrier to bears. And in the early 90s, we started getting bears crossing down into Southern California. We don't have many. Occasionally we find them in the San Jacinto Mountains. Some of you may have recently seen on the news, there's a bear now at Mountain Creek State Park. So that made its way out of Santa Susanas, across the 118 freeway and out there. So bears could move some pretty long distances. Historically, black bears were limited to the Sierra Nevada and the Klamath province, the upper end of the state. But when grizzly bears were extricated in the state, black bears expanded in their range. They completely occupied the Coast Range on their own. And they moved down from the Klamath Range into Mendocino County and down the coast. And the bears in the Monterey area continue to move north as well. Okay, they're called black bears because if you took every black bear in North America and lined them up, 95% of them would be jet black. But they can be chocolate brown in color, medium brown, cinnamon. We even get some blonde bears. I have one rarity. It's a bear who's multicolored. It's like a calico almost, which is really rare. But even though they might be a different color, no, they're still black bears. Oftentimes you'll hear people talk about brown bears. Brown bears is also a common name for coastal grizzly bears. We don't have those in the state. The bear on our state flag, that's grizzly bear. We don't have them in California anymore. The bears we have, even the brown ones, are black bears. Okay, black bears, about 6 feet long. Bear is about 5 feet long, 200 pounds. It's considered full grown. Here in Southern California, where the growing season is longer, we get some pretty big bears. We've had bears that have been over 8 feet long and weighed in excess of 800 pounds before. Also, a few in the Sierra Nevada, we've had some big behemoths. Here in our local mountains, a 350-pound male, that's a really big bear, but the majority of the bears you're going to encounter are usually going to be in the 200-pound range. Yearling bears, those are bears about 18 months of age. Those are the ones that cause most of the problems. They're usually, in the spring and summer months, they're usually around 150, 180 pounds around here. But not too many get over 200. They live to, as you saw there, 25 to 30 years. Reproductively mature at about 4 years of age. Breeding usually occurs in June and July. They begin to reproduce around 4.5 years of age, and they breed every other year. The reason why they breed every other year, they have the young cubs the first year, and then they become yearlings. And they kick the yearlings out when the females are ready to breed again. Litter size is typically around here, it's 2, occasionally you might see 1, or triplets. The further north you get, the larger the litters get. Up in northern Canada, they can be over 6 sometimes, but that's pretty rare. Oh, and one interesting factoid, the number of embryos that a sow, a female bear, will implant is dependent on its health and fat reserves. So the fatter the bear gets, the more embryos it implants. And that's a big issue where bears have access to garbage because they get fatter and then they end up having more cubs. Black bears are kind of like race horses. If you pretty much figure they all have their birthday on February 1st instead of January 1st. The cubs you see, there's not a whole lot of variation in the birthday. It's necessary that the sows den up in order to give birth, and then the weaning usually occurs in July. When you see young cubs out there after they've made it to August 1st, you pretty much can make it on their own if they had to, but it's better if they make it to yearling stage. Occasionally we do get, quote, orphan cubs, but if it's late in the summer or the fall and they get orphaned, their best chance of making it is in the wild. When people intervene, usually we end up having to destroy the cubs because there's nowhere to take them. There are some rehab facilities, but the success of those releases is extremely limited. Okay, this is a sow with some yearlings by a den there. Dens can be underneath large stumps, big logs, hollows in the ground, caves. In some cases, bears will even tunnel into the snow, but that's kind of rare for the black bears. In this one, the bear den is in the top of the tree. I don't know if you can make out the wildlife cloud just up top there. I was going up to tag and monitor the cubs. The radio collar inside this hollow on top of the tree. We see a lot of that up in Northern California. Also, occasionally, in some mountain communities, we will get the odd bear that will den underneath a home. But that happens quite rarely. Yes, the success depending on the quality of the food. And bear's natural diet is high in fiber, it's high in starch, moderately high in protein, but it's low in fat. But when they get access to human sources of food, whether it's garbage or intentional feeding, you're actually providing the bears what they need the most to put on more fat and produce more bear cubs. They're omnivorous, very seasonally, especially where we have steep mountains. Bears can move up and down through different habitats and life zones. So in a given year, there may be more food up high in the meadows or down in the chaparral. So it's a tremendous advantage for the bears ecologically if they have steep mountains around that are forested, because they can quickly change from one habitat to another to take advantage of food supplies. And bears have an incredibly acute sense of smell, and they will seek out anthropogenic or human food sources, garbage in particular. Their natural diet, trout and fawns figure prominently, particularly in the summer months. Our local bears, a lot on insects, termites, grubs, manzanita berries. The manzanita berry crop usually comes out around late August. And a lot of times we'll see a shift in bear behavior. We actually get fewer complaints once that manzanita berry crop comes out. Because bears, when they first emerge, they're primarily feeding on grasses, and then they switch over to forbs, berries. But then in the summer months, when a lot of the plants cure, they lose a lot of their nutrient value. So it's not until that berry crop comes in, the fall berries, and then the acorn crop. And that's when the bears tend to get into a lot of trouble, because they're still out there, they're hungry. A lot of the fall crops and late summer crops aren't quite in yet. But if there's garbage or pet food or people intentionally feeding them, they'll take advantage of it. Yeah, fruits, acorns. Most of the acorn crop comes in October and November. And when that comes in, we've done necropsies on bears where their entire stomachs are filled with nothing but ground up acorns. They'll feed almost exclusively on a good mass crop. Okay, bears see in color, and they do have good vision. It's equal, if not a little bit better than ours. When people say bears have poor vision, well, yeah, they're not eagles, but they can see just fine. And their hearing is close to twice human capacity. And they can smell up to 2 miles, food sources from up to 2 miles away. There's even some documented incidences from even further. Okay, here in our local mountains, several decades ago, there was one of the earlier studies done on bears using radio telemetry. And most of our local bears have home ranges that are only about 3 to 4 square miles. Some of the females will have smaller home ranges. We had one study that was conducted in the Angeles National Forest next to Monrovia. And there, the investigator was looking at bear home ranges where bears were also using urban environments. What they found was bears shift their activity to take advantage of urban environments when there's supplemental food sources, garbage, pet food, and intentional feeding. They occur in coniferous forests, up really high, like up into the white fir and red fir forest in the state, hardwoods, chaparrals, meadows, and a large dead and down component, large logs, is necessary for their existence. They use them a lot, both for cover and for the insects that are dependent upon them. And the males tend to be solitary. Usually when you see a group of bears, it's usually a female with yearlings. And the yearlings around here can be quite big because both the extended growing season and also the fact that they get supplemental food. So they're not a herding animal. However, this sort of territoriality, if you will, breaks down when bears have ready access to food. You can they actually kind of lose some of their territorial defiance towards other bears. denning usually occurs in December. In some of our studies down here in Southern California, we've had bears that actually have gone all the way through the winter without denning. But as I mentioned earlier, it is a necessity that the bears den in order for the females to give birth. And this is sort of your textbook ideal bear habitat if you go up to like Sequoia National Park or Sierra Nevada. All the black bears originally that occurred in California were predominantly found in these habitat types. They were basically displaced in the lower elevations by grizzly bears. Once grizzly bears were gone, they moved down into mixed conifer, hardwood forests and brushlands. This is Barry Stan, biologist in there. He's about 5'8". But those are salmon berries in Alaska. Berries are very important for bears, no matter where you go in the country. The berry crop and the mast crop is a primary food source for them. So when you see bear habitat, it usually will have some sort of component like this in it. Okay, in our black bear population estimates, currently this only goes up to 2011, but we have about 35,000 bears in the state of California. And since I started in '92, every year the population has pretty much gone up. And to put it into perspective, California has more black bears than the state of Maine does. So we have no shortage of black bears in the state. They're by no means rare or threatened or endangered. And the way we keep track of the bear population, hunter-harvest, we collect the teeth. Also, when we get bears on depredation and roadkill. The sex of the harvest bears, we do change in ratio estimators to give us estimates on bear populations. Total number taken by hunters, human effort, and we use all of this in population modeling to give us an idea if the bear population is increasing or decreasing. To oversimplify it some, if you want to know how much hay you're producing, you don't go out and count the individual plants. Use indexes like tons per acre or how many bales you got off your piece of land. We don't go out and count every single bear in the state. It's the same thing if you wanted to know how much sand you needed to fill your yard. You're not going to do it by the grain, you're going to do it by the truckload. And when you're talking about 35,000 bears, this works. Okay, be bear aware. What can you do? How do you keep them away from your home or your cabin? Well, in Forest Falls, this has been an ongoing problem as long as I've been here. There's a couple of hot spots in the state. Forest Falls is one, Mammoth is another, and South Lake Tahoe. Some communities, we seem to have more bear problems than others. What we tend to notice in these communities is the same problems tend to reoccur over and over again. Intentional feeding, unsecured garbage, or else pet food left out unattended. And based on what I was telling you about bears and their sense of smell, you're right up against the forest. The bears can smell what you're leaving out, they can smell the garbage, and they'll take advantage of it. It's a lot easier when you got a fur coat in the summertime to walk up to a shady house and help yourself in the garbage than it is to roam 3 or 4 square miles of the mountain hillside trying to find bugs and berries to eat. And that's why it's important that that stuff be secured. And this is a reoccurring refrain. I can't remember what state this one came up, but no matter what state you go into, you'll see signs posted like this. In Colorado, they had a series of bumper stickers once where it showed open trash can with a line through it, going to end up with a dead bear. Fed bears and dead bears, another cliche. And all of you were old enough to remember the Yogi Bear. No matter how many times it's been said, it's the same problem and it doesn't seem to go away. And anything smelly or edible, they'll take advantage of it. When this bear is up in Plumas County, it caused about $300,000 damage, going from cabin to cabin. And it started out with a bear that was sort of on the edge of this community up near Bucks Lake. But it just kept getting food reward after food reward. And it just got to the point it would just break into homes. It knew what coolers were on site. We have the same problem in Yosemite. The bears have been rewarded so many times because there's about 3 million visitors a year going to Yosemite. And even if you had 99% compliance, that means you got 30,000 people a year doing the wrong thing. So yeah, they got a bear problem, and it's not going to go away. We've done a lot to try and keep it manageable, and that's usually all we can ask you to do is just take some common sense precautions and measures so the problem remains manageable. Number one, locking dumpsters and trash cans that are bear proof. If you don't leave garbage outside, I'm to use one of these. Because once the bears start feeding on the garbage, we've had bears up in the Jenks Lake Loop area actually pick these things up, roll them around and throw them over, trying to break the tops open. It may seem funny, but City of Monrovia spent a few $100,000 on bear-proof trash cans, and then the residents complained it didn't work. Well, you gotta use the lid. People were overstuffing the trash cans, that ain't gonna work. So just because you have a bear-proof dumpster or trash can, it does require some attention. You can't let them overflow. Seems obvious, but here again, this is a common problem we run into over and over again. This was local, right up here at Falls Camp. Picnickers were coming out there. Now this bear was already somewhat habituated to the Forest Falls area. So once all the spring and summer campers came in and this bear was hanging around, oh look, a bear. And these people, they don't care, they're right up to it. They got food out. They're not attempting to scare it off. And this is one of the rare cases that worked well for this bear. Because it couldn't control all the campers out there, they shut the campground down. It was in August. And then by late August, once the manzanita berry crop came out, this bear was didn't come back down in town or around the picnic area again. So it was not euthanized. Okay, Rick has some brochures. You want to hold one of those up? This is a PDF version of it, but after the meeting, if you want one, it gives you tips on what to do to keep your home, not a better term, bear proof, but it's being bear aware, making sure that you're not doing anything to create the problem. And I'm not going to belabor that. It's all the same stuff I've been talking about, so I'm sure. Outbuildings, sheds, that's an okay place to store your garbage. If you don't want it in your home or your garage, but you do need to make some effort. A plastic trash can with a bungee cord over it, no, that doesn't cut it, that's not bear proof. Now, this was a home in the Lake Arrowhead area. The bear basically ripped out the wall of the side of the house, severed the gas lines, the electric lines, the plumbing lines, and dislodged the water meter. And the individuals who had this home, this wasn't their first encounter with this bear. People in the surrounding neighborhood had been feeding the bears. There was unsecured garbage in the community. These people did their best to dissuade the bear. They tried hazing techniques. And finally it got to the point, this was a vacation home of theirs. They couldn't use it anymore because of the damage. Fortunately, it didn't start a fire when it severed the gas line and the electrical. So they got a depredation permit, and the bear was killed by one of the county trappers. And this is indicative of the problems we run across. Just because somebody gets a depredation permit doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong. And to the contrary, if people are doing anything to attract bears to their home and they're suffering problems, we can't issue them a depredation permit until they clear it up. In this case, this gentleman had spent 3 years trying to deal with this bear that kept coming back and breaking into his home. So you can see it finally crossed the line here. Here's another example. That's a latch and flange on the garage door. And you can see the groove there. Bear's incredibly powerful. There was garbage in the garage, and the bear just pulling on the door just dug that steel hinge, like the term for it is, right through the wood. Well, this person took the necessary preventative measures. They had their garbage, they stored it in the garage, and they locked it. But this is the problem that can happen when a bear is habituated. This bear was rewarded with garbage from other homes, from intentional feedings. So when it got to this house, it knew there was garbage in there, and it was going to get it. And this is a common problem we run into, particularly where we have communities that abut national forests like we do here in Southern California. We run into this along the 210 corridor, from Glendale all the way out to Claremont. And it may seem innocuous, but if you leave a dirty barbecue grill outside, the bears smell that fat and they're coming for it. Pet food, yeah, you can't leave the pet food outside. In some cases, when the bears become habituated, even doing this can be a problem, because bears will just see the animals up there feeding and they'll just come running off the food. But the point is to take these precautions so you never get to that point. Yeah, hanging bird feeders with wires. Don't feed other wildlife. I know some places here in our local mountains, it's popular with some people to feed the raccoons. If you're feeding the raccoons, you're feeding the bears too. And this is a typical home up in the Big Bear area. They have unsecured trash can, barbecue grill out. Bears will find that and take advantage of it. Unsecured bird feeder. Okay, I'll leave this for the deputies, but here in San Bernardino County, there is an ordinance about feeding of predators and keeping your garbage secured so predators don't get access to them. Also, Fish and Game Code, harassing of wildlife and feeding of wildlife, it's illegal. And when I was mentioning before, we do get those occasions where bears get under buildings. So if you have open crawl spaces and things like that, make sure you secure them so it doesn't become attractive for a female bear. Because once a female bear gives birth underneath one of your buildings and starts looking for food around there, you're going to be dealing with that problem for a few years. And those yearlings are going to learn that that's where they go to get food. And then intentional feeding. This is probably one of the most selfish things you can do. Oh, look, this is fun. I have a bear in my yard. I got photos of a bear. Look how close the bear comes to my yard. Well, that bear ends up dead. That's what it comes down to. These are wild animals. They're not pets. You got to leave them wild, and they'll be fine. But if you track them into a community where they're going to get access to food and become habituated, when the food bag runs out, they're going to one of your neighbors who's done nothing wrong, and they're going to try and break into their place. And that's a cliche that's repeated over and over again. A fed bear is a dead bear, and it's true. I've been doing this 25 years, and the majority of the bears that end up being killed on depredation permits or euthanized because they're a public safety threat. Usually there's a problem of either unsecured garbage or intentional feeding that's going on. This bear knows what cars are. They pull up, they give them food. This one's in Yellowstone, though, it's not local. I didn't mention beehives. We run into a lot of problems with that in the Angeles National Forest. There's a lot of beekeepers there. There's some simple solutions to keep the bears out of beehives. Nobody in town here has apiaries, do they? Okay. Don't start unless you make them bear proof. And the answer to that was all of the above. Okay, I've already covered a lot of this, except for the fallen fruit. We run into that a lot more in Oakland and some of the other areas. If you have ornamental fruit trees and you're not going to use the fruit, harvest it before it comes right, because it will attract the bears. If you are going to use it, pick it as soon as it's ready and get it out of there. And don't leave rotten fruit on the ground either. Bear-proof dumpsters, actually the largest manufacturer of bear-proof dumpsters in North America has a factory here in Ontario, California. I've worked in a lot of areas. I lived in Canada for a time, worked in the Rocky Mountains, worked throughout the Sierra Nevada, and there are lots of communities that have bears and don't run into these type of problems, and it's because they take these corrective measures. There's nothing cute about it. Every time I see one of these, you just gotta shake your head, because you know that that's a bear that some warden or deputy or biologist like myself is going to have to be euthanizing before the year's over. Okay, our state bear policy, basically we emphasize prevention. Might be repeating a lot here, but category 1 or whatever ones are no harm, no foul. And those are bears that are just around the neighborhood, causing a problem. Sometimes it's just people seeing them. They're uncomfortable. Well, the appropriate response is to haze or move them back towards native habitat. When we say move, it's scare. We don't trap and relocate bears. Not only is it illegal, it just plain doesn't work. So nobody's lazy or mean-spirited. We don't relocate bears because it doesn't solve the problem. In hazing, like scaring, there's one condition that has to be met in order for that to work. You have to remove and secure any attractants that are around. Otherwise, hazing is a waste of time. You can spray a bear in the face with pepper spray, and he's going to come right back if he knows there's food there. Category 2, these are the habituated bears. These are the ones we most often deal with here in Southern California. Usually these bears have already had lots of opportunity with food rewards. They come around homes, they might paw at windows, knocking over trash cans, and all of this is preventable with corrective measures. You've got to secure the garbage, get the pet food or the fruit, whatever the food is that attracting the bears, get it secured, and once you do, if the attractants are secured, then hazing can be employed. But if there's food out in your town, it's not going to work. And then the third category, which is the worst for the bear, is depredation. That's where bears cause chronic or severe property damage. Peeling a car door open. You saw the photo of the wall of the house was completely ripped out, garage doors, bears breaking into homes. When that happens, depredation permits are issued, and it's up to the property owner to kill the offending animal, or they can hire someone to do it. But fortunately here in San Bernardino County, there is also a county trapper available if he's around. They can also take problem bears. And when I say take, that means kill. Examples of the damage: the bear came in, broke out the door, ate the food, destroyed the cabinets, destroyed the counter. One serious problem we often run into is bears will knock refrigerators over, food will leak out, they don't know the door is down, and they get up on top of them and either tunnel through or break the backs off of them. So that's not something you want to come home and find your $1,000 refrigerator shredded. No good outcomes for a habituated bear. Think about that if you ever want to feed one. Is the bear